I'm Amy, sex educator, somatic sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure products company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com. Hello, everyone.
Good morning or afternoon or evening.
Or middle of the night.
Or middle of the night.
Or
summer if you're in Australia, winter, fall, autumn if you're above the northern hemisphere.
We're recording from Santa Cruz, where it has yet to turn into it's fall, but it's like
super
summer
hot.
fall. Yeah,
It's like 80 degrees Fahrenheit today, which is maybe like 18 degrees Celsius.
I don't even know that conversion, but I like what you just said. I'm concerned we're not going to get rain. I'm already a little worried. Are you worried?
I just drove by that reservoir today on the way I had to take my car over to San Jose.
Super
and it was
depressing.
looking very, very sad, dismal, draining.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no.
Yep. Hey, Chip, I'm wondering if you want to tell your blowjob story on the air.
Okay, wait. And I just need to update you that 80 degrees is about 26 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, you just Googled it.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I was like, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound very warm. Anyway, 26 degrees Celsius. Mm-hmm. So, blowjob story. Funny story.
Your partner just told me this funny.
Yeah, he's like,
a
Amy,
drive-by blowjob story.
April gave me a really great blowjob the other night. And Amy's like, really? That sounds like a little sarcastic. Do you want to talk more about that? And I was like, I don't care. I have no shame. It happened. So... The funny thing is, though, you have to like see what I'm doing because I'll try to describe it, but I was really jet lagged. Let me just give you a premise to what happened. I was super jet lagged and
paint the picture, Chip.
Ended up drinking quite a bit with my friend was in town from Austin, her and her husband and her 2 kids. So they're pretty big drinkers. And so I was trying to keep up with them. And I was drinking like bourbon and tequila and wine. Raw. Don't even want to think about that now together because it's a lot. And I ended up getting pretty intoxicated. And we came home and I'm like, let's have a sex. Come on. Kind of doing my little, I'm cute, but not really because I'm wasted kind of dance. And then I was like, I'm going to give you a blowjob. Mm-hmm. So then I went down and then it couldn't get the dick in my mouth. It like hit my cheek, hit my
forehead.
Almost like me painting my face with his dick. And he was like laughing and I was like, stop it. So not a good look. And I couldn't find my mouth.
Yeah. Did it ever find your mouth?
Nope.
No? Did you pass out like mid dick?
No, we finished. I actually do. I don't have a clear memory of exactly how that went down, but I do remember I actually did have an orgasm after that because I was like, oh yeah, and like squirted a little bit and then passed out.
I feel like there's all these stories of you like having orgasm and squirting, but like not being that present for it. and I wonder if our listeners are a little alarmed. Don't worry, everyone. She seems happy and like it's.
I don't really make it a regularity to get that wasted. That's not really my favorite thing.
You're
to do.
like initiating sex.
Well, that's the thing. I get all like woo, like all jacked up on the Mountain Dew, and I don't know. I just like think that for some reason that I get overly sexual.
Yeah,
and then I definitely have never done the whole miss my mouth thing before with the dick.
Well, it's tricky territory. I know not for you. I know that you're not saying that, but I think for people listening, like because the consent thing is so big with intoxication.
Yeah,
and that if you're not there fully present to make consent, then it's not consent. Even if you're making consent, but you're so out of it based on whatever you've been consuming. And I know, April, in your case, that you're in a committed relationship, and even that.
Yeah. Well, I also let my boundaries. I let my guard down a little bit more because I was with him, and I think that I feel so comfortable. A lot of times, like probably drink more than I should that night for sure.
And jet lag,
but
will fuck you
and
up.
jet lag did fuck me up because I feel like I didn't consume that much more than I typically do. It just hit me that much harder. So just like when I'm going to get my period, I get extra drunk, even though I don't drink like as much as I
extra tipsy.
Yeah, I'll just be like, whoa, that'll hit me. So I don't recommend getting that wasted and trying to.
Or on the flip side, if you're being intimate with someone that's that wasted, there's some extra precaution that needs to be taken there. And I'm not saying your case. I'm just like speaking to other folks.
Well, no, my partner said, he's like, I didn't realize how
fucked up
because I keep it together. He's like, I didn't realize how fucked up you were until that whole thing happened with my cock. And
he's like, oh shit.
Yeah. He's like, well, now it's kind of late because she's into it. Trying to be.
Yeah, it's that one's tricky. That one's a really.
But that's like and I'm not making light of unconsensual sex when you're like hammered, but I am making light of my situation because it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, you're talking about for you. I just wanted to point that piece out for other folks as well. And your situation was I mean, you're consenting there. You initiated. You think it's cute and funny, and I thought it was pretty cute and funny.
You did too. Yeah. You were like, oh, chill.
I just picturing you do it. Like, if you've never seen a picture of April, I suggest you go to our Instagram right now, follow Shameless Sex on there, and you can see her, and she's like adorable, fit little thing. Just picture her wasted, putting a dick all over her face.
Painted my face with that dick.
Yeah, paint that dick. Paint that face. Okay, so everyone, this episode is going to be about great sex and connection after trauma. This is a big thing. We get a lot of sex questions about this, folks wondering, how do I get back into my body? How do I trust again? I'm not feeling pleasure the way I used to because they have had some significant trauma. So we're going to go into that with someone who is a MFT, a marriage and family therapist, who also has their own trauma too, and their own trauma story, and how a personal story of how they bounced back.
And it was her first time sharing it.
Actually, I know,
which was really special.
I know, we got that on air, and she has her own podcast.
I know,
and she shares her trauma story for the first time on air on our podcast. So
it was really special. So stay tuned. You're gonna it really. Love the episode because it is heartfelt. I almost cried.
Yeah. And then before we dive into that, we have some other things. We have a sex question that is about pegging and anal. If you know what pegging is, then you want to hear this one.
And yes, strap on
sex. And then OMG, yes.
Did you check out omgs.com? Anybody out there?
Anyone?
Amy, you have.
I mean, I have. I've only experienced season 1, but it was a game changer for me. I absolutely love it. I'm super excited for season 2.
Well, I just wanted to kind of share just a couple tidbits about it because actually, I was trying to tell some of my friends about it too because they were like, wait, what is the OMGS? I heard you talking about it. Can you talk more, like let me know more about it? So I made myself like
a PowerPoint presentation
with laser, but because it's like conceptually it's kind of hard to grasp, but then once you learn about it, you're like, oh, that's really easy. And a bunch of researchers got together and they basically go through what feels good and why through honest, real humans. So they use real humans, not actors or porn stars or it's like real mostly
humans.
vulva owners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they surveyed real humans.
So
I think it's like over 1,000.
2,000.
Oh, yeah.
2,000 women of all ages from the ages of 18 to 95 was what I heard. So what there are is like 62 short videos. 11 of them are interactive, and you can use this one time. You pay one time for the season, and you get. They're kind enough at OMGS, the researchers, to give Shameless Sex listeners. So that means you. I'm pointing to the microphone. $5 off your purchase, so you can get season 1.
If you use OMGS /shameless.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And so basically, I know I say basically a lot because I listen to my podcast. I'm like, damn it, April, stop saying basically. So in a nutshell, it's a no blushing, kind of like what we do on this podcast. It's a no blushing, no shame approach to smashing the taboos around female sexuality and female pleasure. So,
and exposing the diversity of it in a way where there's so many options for how you can up your game and pleasuring yourself that we don't even know about. Like, I think I talked about this in this past podcast, but I set these dates. Like, I'm going to have an OMGS night. So I'll have it be a night to myself. I'll choose one video because there's so many options, and it's kind of like a self-care night, like a sexy self-care night. And I'm like, I'm going to try this technique that I've never tried. I've never really tried a lot of like swirls to the left, swirls to the right. And I discovered some new things that I liked that I had no idea. Like, I was already happy with what I was doing, but I was like, wow, now I have new tools to add to my toolkit. So that was exciting.
Well, the thing is that because it's 2,000 women of all ages, think about it. Like, from when I was 18 till now I'm 36, my pleasure has changed so much. So it's like looking at women that are 95, how they're pleasuring themselves, what they've learned. So it's really, it's looking at the research and getting other people's insights and techniques on enhancing your pleasure. And it covers, if you think about it, most ages of consenting adults. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not just, if you're a person out there that wants to understand vulvas, you're a couple, you're in a relationship with a vulva owner, you are a vulva owner, this is for you. So that's a majority of our listeners actually are fitting into that bracket. So if you are listening right now, go to omgs.com/shameless and buy the first season. You get $5 off.
And season 2 should be out anytime.
62 short videos and 11 of them are interactive. And you can check out the interactive portion, but I'm a huge fan and I'm a huge fan of what they're doing. And your money that you're going to spend on this I can't tell.
Goes towards research for future seasons.
Exactly.
So season 2 is pretty much about to be online, but season 3, there's going to be more stuff about sex toys, men's sexual pleasures coming up, anal pleasure. There's so much going on. So by actually participating in it and learning for yourself, enhancing your own sex life, you're helping other people's sex lives too.
But it's so cool to kind of be a part of your money is not just going for something
like towards like
right now.
Wine and beer.
Yeah, wine and beer. It's going for research and learning more about our sexuality as humans. So
and pleasure,
shameless sex.
I think I have talked about this on past episodes that I have when my coaching practice, when I work with clients, I get people of all ages, like female-bodied folks in their 30s to their 60s who are so unaware still of what their body is like, and they're relying on other people to pleasure them, and the way that people are pleasuring them is like porn star sex, and like, why am I not having orgasms? Why am I not liking sex with my partner? And I'm like, what kind of sex are you having? And then they tell me or show me from just like some movements, and it's just missing all the good spots. And when I send them to OMGS and they have either them watch it by themselves to learn what their body likes, and then they can either share that with their partner or watch it together with their partner or have their partner watch it later or whatever, but it's been a game changer. So just throwing out some ideas there.
I'm gonna have my partner watch it for sure. Not because he
sucks at everything.
Yeah, not because of that, not trying to change his ways, just adding, like you said, tools
menu,
to your tool belt.
To the toolkit.
So I just wanted to touch on that. You had an announcement about you're teaching a class?
I am teaching a class, everybody. If you're in Santa Cruz or nearby on November 4th, this is 2018, I'm teaching a Tantra and Motion workshop, a sensual movement workshop is what the Tantra Motion is the name. I co-teach with Daniel Molnar, who leads ecstatic dance here, and he is one of the best teachers I have ever seen. It is an honor to work side by side with this human. And this is a half-day workshop, so it's from 1 to 5 p.m. I believe it's a Sunday in Santa Cruz, and you can find out more if you go to purepleasureshop.com. If you really want to learn more about Tantra in an experiential way, and it's going to be sensual and juicy. It's open to individuals, couples, triads, whomever wants to come, and everything is consensual. All touch things are over the clothes, and it's just a really good way to get into your inner turn on in a big group environment. So hopefully I will see some of y'all's out there. And
that's nice.
There's one other thing I want to talk about before we go to the sex question is that horoscope thing. We just got back from Germany.
Oh, that's so cool.
And we did it, and we recorded an episode there. If you listened to our last one with the awesome Kristen from Fun Factory, but there we saw the horoscope line by Bijou Indiscrets, and it is fucking awesome.
It's like so in line with, I feel like, who we are as women. It's a women-owned company. Women began. They specialize in this beautiful, like, sexy accessories. Very high end. They're chic, but not pricey. And they just created this line it's called Horoscope. It's a little finger medical grade silicone finger vibe, and in a little kit branding is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
You get
little necklace,
a necklace with your gemstone, and they all vary because they're natural stones. So each one's a little different. And then you also get an all natural clitoral warming balm.
But the balms there's earth, air, wind, fire too. So it's like if you're into horoscopes or you're into astrology or things that are more like aligned uniquely with you, and it's just cute. Like you get a sex toy and jewelry in one. It's awesome, and the price point is really affordable. It's I think it's under $50.
I think it's 44, and you get 15% off
with
if you use the code shameless. Go to
all caps.
It's all caps.
Yeah.
And go to bijouindiscrets.com. How do you spell it, Aim?
BIJOUXINDISCRETS.com.
Yeah, it's like bijou. Like they're from Barcelona. Actually, the company's from Barcelona. The clitoral balm's made in Spain.
Oh, is it?
It is. Yeah,
it's so.
And
it's
the necklaces
super cute.
they love like boutique, small scale stuff. Like I'm saying, like local artisan. I love those two words because everybody wants to support their local, artists and different things in their community. They're filled with amazing artists, but their clitoral balm is made in Barcelona. And it all comes in a little kit. So I don't want to say Christmas because holidays are coming very soon, whether it's Black Friday or the, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, Boxing Day, all of it's coming. So great gift idea. And
it was one of my favorite things that I saw, like new things of the year. Yeah. In sex. We see a lot of sex toys. And it was one of my faves. They're
sending you and I one so we can actually talk about using it, but we didn't have room in my suitcase was like 25 kilos. So I didn't have any room for it, but she's mailing it to us. So
I'm excited.
The bullet did feel really strong. So check out Bijou Indiscret and Horoscope Line. Get 15% off. You're not going to break the bank with that one.
Code shameless. All caps. All right. Sex question time. Anal. I love anal.
Do you want to do anal with me?
Anal. I love anal.
I love anal.
Is this your Israeli accent?
Yeah.
I like
Do you
it.
like anal?
I like to go to the beach.
I like to go to the beach too.
You want to go to the beach?
If anybody out there speaks Hebrew, there's a direct translation. It translates to "I'm going to open your ass," and it actually means they mean like I'm going to kick your ass, like we'd say in the English language. But I can't remember how to say it right now. It's like something I can't remember how to say it, but it's like I'm going to open your ass, and I'd be playing like matkot, which is like the racquetball, not racquetball, but the beach.
Yes, with the wood paddles.
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called in English, but I would be playing that because they play it all over the beaches in Tel Aviv, if you remember, Amy, from when we were there.
Yeah.
And I heard several people I would be playing would be like, I'm going to open your ass.
So they would say it in English?
Yeah, they say it in English to me because they directly translate it from Hebrew to
that's
English.
So funny.
And I would be like, excuse me? Like, you want to do the anal?
Yeah, I'm trying to open my ass on the beach. It's a public beach, but okay, I guess go Israel. So here is a question. So this is about the subject is prostate and anal, and we are going to leave this human anonymous, but this is from a male identified person who is married, and he has been married for I don't know how long, but anyways, there were girlfriend. Oh no, not married, girlfriend. Take that back. Okay, so this is a girlfriend, and they have been starting to explore with prostate play on his body because he's the one with the prostate. So questions are, he wants to know if strap-ons are enjoyable for his girlfriend. So will my girlfriend enjoy wearing a strap-on? He loves pleasing her more than receiving, or are strap-ons overdoing it? And then question number 2 is that my girlfriend has recently experienced, I guess you would call it squirting, and she loves it. Is there any way I can make it more pleasurable for her? Is it okay that I think her cum and bodily fluids taste good? All right, so let's go to numero uno.
With that first question, the strap-on sex, you and I are both, and we always have been the spare parts harnesses.
Oh yeah,
they are the most comfortable harnesses, and we're not even giving them a shout out on purpose. Like they really are the best harnesses that money can buy. They're expensive for a harness, but they're comfortable. And they're machine washable, and they're warranted, and they're made in the USA, and
they look damn good. Like you can find the perfect one for your body.
They look like underwear.
They look and feel like underwear, and it's like bathing suit material. It's as good as a harness gets. It keeps the dildo where you want it. It looks sexy, and it's super comfortable.
I sat next to one of the founders on the ride back from Germany to London. I love him, by the way, so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Is he an owner? I'm still confused.
Yeah, he's partner.
Okay.
And they're coming out with a new line too. That's like my reason for bringing that up is because they're so focused on perfection to make sure the quality is guaranteed that they've been taking, I think it's almost taken an extra year. So it's going to be separates, but like lingerie. So you should check out their stuff. It's like,
if you go to myspare.com or spare parts harnesses, we have them at Pure Pleasure actually.
Yeah.
If you go to purepleasureshop.com, if you look up spare parts harnesses, it's all one word. And there's different styles that we have there, and you get 15% off with coupon code shamelesspp in all caps.
When I used to do those little pleasure parties, I would wear one, and you've worn one too during training.
And put a dildo in there, and people start cracking
but
up.
It sits right under your cheeks of your
that's a jock style.
The jock style one, and it looks really hot because it kind of like you tighten it up, and it like kind of raises your ass up a little bit. So I don't know if they asked that in the question.
They're not asking about anything. They're asking, is it enjoyable for their girlfriend? Like this person has been enjoying prostate play where their girlfriend has been stimulating their prostate, and they want to know that if their girlfriend wears a strap on, if the girlfriend will like it, because they like pleasing their girlfriends. So their girlfriend. So
I would say, well, not to interrupt you, it depends. If you could, in theory, if you wanted to get a double-ended dildo, if she wanted to feel something inside while she's pegging, you could wear a double-ended dildo. Yeah, Fun Factory makes it an awesome one. The Share, yeah, and that one they have the Share Vibe too, right? Yeah, and then so the spare parts harnesses, you can put a double dildo in there. And the Share Vibe also vibrates for the person that's wearing it. But also the spare parts harness has a bullet hole that goes right around where the harness meets the clitoris if it's a female body wearing it. And so they can get vibrations while wearing the harness. It's already in there. It's like already packed in there if they put a bullet vibe in there too. So I would say for someone to enjoy this is what pegging is. Pegging is when a female body tops a male body. There's a couple ways they can get off to it. One is the act of dominance. So if your girlfriend's into dominating you, then that could be really pleasurable for her. And I would imagine that if she's not into that and likes to be more submissive, then this might not be her jam. But like April's saying, you can use sex toys where they get pleasure too, whether it's from a vibrator externally that's in the harness, or there's the Share dildo or Share Vibe dildo, double dildo. And if you're a prostate owning individual who prefers prostate stimulation, you could always use a prostate stimulator. If like your partner doesn't want to peg you, you could have them use a prostate stimulator on you, or just use some fingers. Yeah. If that's something that you're really into and they're not into the domination, like the harness wearing a harness and maybe more in a dominant role. Yeah. And then for question 2, the girl from recent experiences, so squirting. Is there any way it can make it more pleasurable for her? And is it okay that I think her cum and body fluids taste good? Fuck yeah, it's good. It's great if you think those things taste good. What do they mean by more pleasurable?
They're not really giving a lot of details, so I don't really know exactly what that means. But
'cause that's like the height of, I feel like squirting? I get so much pleasure out of when I squirt, or the build up to squirting.
I mean, it's different. Like, okay, so you can have squirting where it just feels like it's more gushing and like a nice release. Like there's been pressure built up, it's a nice release. You can gush / squirt combined with orgasm where your muscles contract. So you're having an actual like orgasmic process where you get that euphoric feeling combined with the release. So I don't know. It just depends for this person. Like when they're squirting, are they actually having that like blissful orgasm-y process too? Or is it just the nice release? Because the nice release is awesome. And I still throw that in the category as orgasm, but it isn't that same feeling, that like, euphoric, like I left my body for, a second or two and my pelvic floor is contracting and there's just like so much pleasure flowing through me. They're a little different from each other, and they can go hand in hand, but they don't always do that. So maybe to up the game is to combine the two. You don't get the squirting thing while giving them a mind-blowing orgasm as well.
Some advanced shit right there.
It's turbo shit, man. I mean, the magic wand can do that, right? Yeah. Like using the magic wand, that really powerful vibrator is on the clit is so powerful that not everyone, because some people have to learn how to release to squirt. Mm-hmm. But if you do have an orgasm, often it can be an ejaculatory one because it's so powerful. It just like squeezes the urethral sponge. So it's pretty badass.
I've experienced that.
And then to the last part, is it okay that I think her cum and body fluids taste good? Fuck yes. I wish more people thought that way about female-bodied body fluids, so I think that's great, and tell her as much as possible so that she just ramp up her confidence there, because a lot of female body folks have shame around their body fluids, around their pussies and the way they smell and the way they taste. So the more you tell them that you think their cum tastes good, the better. And actually, Kristen talked about this.
Yeah, she did.
About how the reason, she's like, what'd she say? She's like, part of the reason why I stopped sleeping with men was because of jizz.
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily love
wasn't
it.
her jam, but she said female body fluids, like female cum, she loves. She's all about it. She's like, it's kind of like sweet and liquidy, and it's not gummy. And
never tasted it.
I'm not hating on male-bodied folks and their cum, but yeah, if you love it, own it and praise it. Why not?
I like it.
Do it. So that's our sex question. Thank you, listener. We love you. And for all you all sending us sex questions, as we said, we're now being particular about what ones we answer, because we want to diversify what we answer on this podcast. So feel free to send us sex questions, and we may answer them. We have interns that are helping us to pick and choose sex questions these days. So thank you to our interns, Madison and Paige. You ladies are badass.
XOXO. Yeah, they're amazing. Really.
Yeah, we love you. And then if you have sex questions, like immediate sex questions too, that we can't answer, you can go to the Juicebox app. If you go to Juicebox and you use coupon code SHAMELESS, you also get 5 days free, I believe, on the Juicebox app.
Oh, that's nice.
And you get your questions answered all anonymously through chat really quickly. It's through iPhones.
You have a problem, we create a solution.
Yeah, girl.
That's not their tagline. I just made that up.
I like that though. It sounds like a car ad or something. Where
you have a problem, we have a solution. Shameless sex.
Okay, last but not least, we I think we talked about this on our last couple ones, but we have our online video workshop coming up soon.
Because it's October right now when we're recording this.
October.
And we're going to release this series
October 30th.
Go to our website, shamelesssex.com, and click on the workshop, online workshop, and then it'll give you all the details about what we're offering. And it's a pretty good deal. It's something that you can watch over and over again. 4 videos, 30 minutes or less, and how to be your most erotic, empowered, amazing self.
Yep, we give all kinds of juicy tips.
Tools.
And then it also involves some direct work with us as well. And we are really looking forward to working with people with more directly. Like we love giving you our voices. You can watch our faces on Instagram, and we're really looking forward to getting direct contact and giving people one-on-one or /group support as well. So that is available if you go to shamelesssex.com and click on the workshops, and then that will be launched on October 30th. If you want to learn how to be your most badass erotic self, and this first iteration is geared just towards female-identified folks. Hey girl, so I can't drink wine right now because I'm on a break. I'm drinking some good old bubble water, but the Margins is back. April's drinking wine. It's only 4:30 in the afternoon. Don't judge her.
Is it only 4:30? I'm still on London time, which is at midnight.
It's a great time to drink wine.
It is. And actually, I just saw the winemaker. I was eating dinner at a local restaurant in Santa Cruz, and she just is awesome. Her name is Megan Bell. She's been making wine for a few years. She's a young winemaker, but she studied it as part of her degree. I think at Davis. I think she went to UC Davis, but that's beside the point. I did because I always talk about wine with my friends. Because I love you, Amy, but I'm not always with you. I have other friends, and they're like, "What's up with the raw wine?"
Wait, you have other friends?
I do, from time to time. So I went and looked up exactly what raw wines are, because we've talked about it before, but I just want to give our listeners just a few really important things that I learned myself. And I was like, oh, so actually raw winemakers, and that's not raw, I'm sorry, natural wine. It's almost like raw, but they, obviously all the grapes are organic and they're biodynamically grown. And then they use hand picking instead of machine harvesting, because machine harvesting actually damages the grapes, which it leads to oxidation, and it leads to bacterial growth, which is why they put a bunch of stuff to purify the wine.
Chemicals and things.
And things. So this is a way better approach. And I don't want to say that other approaches are bad, but this is better for your body because you actually it's better for the environment as well. It lowers your the carbon footprint of the winemakers, and it's obviously there's not a bunch of preservatives, herbicides, pesticides that they're using to grow the grapes either. So that's kind of amazing. And then when they ferment it, instead of adding a bunch of stuff, conventional grape growers, I guess they add sprays to it to kill the yeasts that live on the grapes. The natural wines that Margins Wines makes, they're made with unsprayed fruit, or they're made with the unsprayed fruit. Yeah. So the grapes actually spontaneously ferment, which is more natural again. So you get to the flavors are different from bottle to bottle. There's the consistency is varies from basically vintage. If you're not familiar, a vintage is a year in winemaking. So vintage to vintage can vary. And Megan's making wine from underrepresented regions, mostly in California, and with underrepresented varietals. Like right now I'm drinking the Mourvedre, which is not common in California, not as common. And then I think the other one, what's the other one?
Cab Franc?
Yeah, Cab Franc, which is, it's common. You can get Cab Francs, I think, in France, but it's not as common out here.
All kinds of things. And I'm like, I've never heard that. Like, I think the Sangiovese is the only one I'd ever heard of, but I'm also don't know my wine as well as you do.
Well,
they're all fucking delicious.
Well, they're really delicious. And because of, we were always asking for a wine sponsorship, and she is generous enough. She just like, I believe in what she's doing and her wine. And she's giving you, our listeners, 10% off if you buy three or more bottles, and you use the code shamelesssex10 on marginswine.com. And if you buy 6 or more bottles, she'll give you 15% off. So use shamelesssex15 and you'll get 15% off. It's very reasonably priced wine. I think there's nothing over $25. So you're saving pretty good amount of money on 3 or to 6 bottles. So,
and it's amazingly delicious, and if you have a dinner party, you will impress, because people will be like, what? I've never had anything like this. This is amazing. It's raw wine. What's raw wine? And then you can sound really smart and just quote April as if you know a lot about wine, like I do, because I don't know a lot about wine.
Yeah, but isn't that, I love little bulleted facts like that. So I've got some more for next time we talk about it. I'm just going to keep educating. Not much. I'm not going to bore you, but because if you don't drink wine and you're like, fuck this bitch right now.
Up, girl, I am sober. I'm just sober this week. Because knowledge is power. That's my little shout out to, what is that, like Reading Rainbow?
Yeah.
Or,
I can do anything. Take a look.
Is that Reading
It's
Rainbow?
in a book. Reading Rainbow.
I just want to ask, this is on that note, because we did a talent show. I'm in the Hakomi training, which is a holistic psychotherapy training that has like Buddhist undertones / how to, I'm learning more therapeutic practices to work with clients. And anyways, we did a talent show. I did not participate. But
Why?
I was a little scared.
Oh,
but there were some great shows, some people that just did fun things. And this one guy did, who maybe he's listening now, shout out to you. I'm not going to say your name. But he did this like old Reading Rainbow thing where they have like the little like ding, 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 ding. And he's reading
xylophone.
And he's reading a story. And he read this story called Marlon Bundo. And it's about, have you heard of this?
It sounds familiar.
It's adorable. It's like this little boy bunny who meets this other little boy bunny, and he likes hanging out with this little boy bunny. And anyway, I think they end up like falling in love or something. Aww. But it's like this cute kid story talking about 2 little boy bunnies that fall in love.
Same sex bunnies.
Same sex. They really enjoy hanging out with each other, and they have all this fun, and they all do all these fun bunny things together. And it was like the cutest thing ever. And actually, I saw that book in my therapist's office. I went to my therapist in there, and I saw like Marlon Bundo in there. And I was like, that is just adorable. Because
Marlon Bundo, Jimmy Dean on the cover of a magazine.
What is that?
I just used, instead of Marlon Brando.
Oh, is this a Lady Gaga song?
No, that's Madonna.
Oh.
Vogue from the 90s.
Oh, okay. I get it. Vogue. Mm-hmm. Vogue.
So Vogue.
Okay, so let's move on to the actual episode then. At that, we can tell we need to move on. We start doing weird things like that. Anyways, check out Marlon Bundo. We don't have a coupon code for
and
you.
Margins Wine.
Drink Margins Wine while
reading Marlon Bundo.
It's a cute gift to give a kid, I think, too. So I like it. All right, everyone. So we're going to dive in the podcast on how to have great sex and connection after trauma. Enjoy. All right, everyone. So it is podcast time as promised. And before we dive in, I will read the bio of our wonderful guest speaker. So, Terah Harrison is a licensed professional counselor and host of the Make Love, Not War podcast, which has a clear mission of helping people have more sex with less fighting. She discovered the need for her podcast as she saw male clients at her private practice in Fort Worth, Texas, who were struggling to understand their female partners. While Terah's podcast is directed towards men, her evil plan is really to help women have more connected relationships with men where they feel heard and understood in a way that leads to more sex and less fighting for all. To learn more, visit makelovenotwar.com. Welcome, Terah. Woo.
Hi.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Evil plan.
Yes.
And I like that you're from Texas. I thought I heard a little Southern bell or Southern bow. I don't know, whatever you want to say. Southern twang.
Southern human.
Yeah. Definitely Texas. Yeah. You'll hear it more as you talk to me.
And you're in Dallas area?
I am. Yes. Like Dallas, Fort Worth.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's definitely a need for, I guess, the mission. This is great. Helping people have more sex with less fighting.
Sounds good, right? Who doesn't want that?
How do you feel about makeup sex? Like people get in a fight and then they have sex.
Oh, well, that's good too. Yeah. I mean, it's better to have just like hot, sexy, angry sex without having a fight first. But if that's what gets you there, I guess it's all right.
Yeah, if you cannot have the fight, then kudos to you. Okay, so the topic today, we're going to specifically talk more about great sex after trauma, how to find yourself again, connect to your body again, and connect to feel safe connecting to partners. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, trauma aside? You were as a licensed professional counselor and having the podcast. Like, how did you get into this realm, into the field of sexuality?
I think I got more into the field of sexuality as I connected more with my own sexuality. So when I started off in counseling, I was really actually wanting to work with families of kids with autism. I'd done a lot of work with kids with autism, and I was doing that during graduate school and all of this kind of stuff. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do. And then I started working in early intervention, and I was doing home visits and working with families and stuff like that in inner city Fort Worth. And I did have some interesting experiences with at that time with my first meeting women who are sex workers at that time, because I was working with their kids and stuff like that. So that was like an early experience there. But I really didn't think that I wanted to work with couples. Really wanted to work with kids. But then I just started. The more that I worked with families, the more I really saw the need to help couples connect. And so I started working in private practice after I stopped working in early intervention. I worked for the government in early intervention, and that'll burn you out really quick. So I started working in private practice and started working with kids there. But then I just started working with more adults, and I started doing couples therapy, and I got Gottman training. So I use Gottman couples method. And the more I started working with couples and kind of moved away from working with kids, the more that I just saw that men and women really in relationships together really wanted the same thing, and they both wanted this sense of emotional safety together. And for women, that looked in general, that looked different than men. Women were wanting more of the feeling of validation, and that he understands me, and that he understands my feelings. And men were wanting more of the sexual connection. And what I really found, though, is that it wasn't that women didn't want that too. It's just that they wanted to feel emotionally safe first. And men really feel emotionally safe when they're connecting sexually. So there was this impasse there. And what I really learned from working with a lot of men is that emotional safety key is that component that is very important for women is very important for men, but they find it in sexual connection. And a lot of women just didn't understand that. And so that's one thing that I've been helping men and women to understand about each other, is that we all want more sex and less fighting, but we just kind of go about it different ways. And so in doing that work, I started working with a lot more men individually and helping them understand women and understand how to connect with their female partners. And through that, I realized that, men really don't have this place to really be able to understand women without going to therapy, because men don't talk about it together unless they have female friends. But I really wanted to bring this information to a large group of people. And my husband was listening to podcasts all the time. I didn't even listen to podcasts. I was like, what are you doing sitting on your ass in the office all the time, listening to people talk? What are you doing in there? And turned out he was listening to podcasts, and he would tell me about the podcasts and stuff like that, and what he learned from it. And I was thinking, well, if I'm trying to reach men to help them understand women so that we can all have more sexual connection, more emotional connection, which is same on both sides, then why don't I create a podcast? Why don't we create a podcast? And I've been asking my husband to go to therapy with me for a while, just to talk about things we needed to work through, and he just refused to go, which is hilarious because I'm a therapist and my husband wouldn't go to therapy with me. So I thought, well, what if I ask him to be my co-host, and I can bring the therapist to him and get him to talk about things that he's uncomfortable talking about with me, and in a sort of arena that he's comfortable with, which is a podcast, and also it's a business, and he feels really comfortable with businessy things. So that was part of me creating the podcast too, was for us to get closer emotionally, and that's also helped us get a lot closer physically and sexually. So it's been a win-win all around. So that's what I'm hoping to bring for other women is men can understand women more, women can feel more sexually liberated, and then they can both meet in the middle and have each other's sexual and emotional needs met.
The part about you two creating the podcast together. So, my partner and I, we were driving the other day, and we decided that we were going to just do a voice memo and record our own podcast together, just driving in the car.
That's fun.
So we created a voice memo, and we just called our podcast, our names combined. So it was the Damie podcast, and I don't use his name on here, but his name starts with a D. And we did this little mini podcast for 45 minutes. It's super fun. And what I found in recording a podcast together, I mean, it hasn't gone on the air or anything, but that we were both not afraid to say the things that might usually trigger the other person, because we knew we were being recorded. So our responses couldn't be batshit crazy, because it was recorded, right? So we couldn't just go into this. I mean, I guess we could have, but it gave us more permission to stay present and not go into defensiveness, and to really take into account what the other person was saying. And so we said, I don't know if you found this with recording a podcast with him and bringing the therapist, but it just creates this safety, I think, in okay, we have to take this seriously, especially if you have another therapist on there, right? The things that people say one-on-one versus in front of a therapist are entirely different. It's entirely different.
Oh yeah. I've noticed that.
Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced it and also seen it in your office too. So that's funny. Yeah, I was like, maybe we should record every time we have to talk about something really serious.
Just tell them it's a podcast. Be like, I'm recording right now. Yeah. I'm recording right now.
Just so
yes.
Every episode with you?
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's my co-host. So it's really been awesome, because we've had some episodes on women's sexuality that like when we talked to Sean, that y'all also interviewed from the Love Drive, about how to eat pussy, and I was like, I'm hoping he'll listen to some of these techniques. Mm-hmm. Not that it's also brought us, it's also helped us talk to each other about sex more. Mm-hmm. Which a lot of couples struggle with, but I mean, to me, he's learned so much more about emotions than he ever would have in another arena, just because it was a safe place to learn.
Note to self, everyone: you want to get close to the partner, start a podcast. Everyone's doing it.
Exactly. We're gonna have all these couples with podcasts now.
Yeah, I know. It's this is our private therapy session. This is how we get close.
Exactly.
So on the note of trauma, I'm going to go and dive into a little bit of trauma, and I know that you have a personal story about trauma from your own personal experience, but can you tell us some of the ways that trauma shows up in the mind, body, and spirit? I know that it's very diverse. A lot of people think of trauma as only coming from non-consensual acts of sexual violence, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the diversity of trauma?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, trauma, there's so many different forms of trauma, and it also really depends on how it affects you when it happens in your life. if you have early childhood trauma, like between 0 and 5, that's when the brain is 90% of the brain is formed during that time. So that's the kind of trauma that a lot of people that experience trauma during that time will internalize. And so you see a lot more guilt and shame around that, because maybe there's no words to express it, and there's really no understanding of what happened. And I'm not just talking about sexual trauma. That could also be your house burns down, or you get in a really bad accident. And a lot of these pre-verbal memories, you don't even really know that. You might not even remember that it happened, but it affects your body. It stays in your body. And so, and diversity of trauma, that could be something like a car accident, like I said, or it could be, could be a parent leaving, where you've lost a parent, whether it's through death or the parent left or whatever. It could be something that you expected to happen in your life that didn't. In one of our podcasts, my husband talks about how his racing career didn't happen the way he thought it was, and how he had to heal and get through that trauma. And so in 0 to 5, when things like that happen, it hugely affects the brain development. But the really positive thing about that is, if you have corrective experiences around that time, if you have a parent that's attentive to your needs with the trauma, gets counseling, or shows you that even though I wasn't able to protect you in this one time, this particular incident, I'm going to show you that you're worthy of protection now, then you could still have secure attachments and go on with your life, and it could be repaired. When trauma happens in later developmental stages, early childhood, which is like grade school, adolescence, and teenager, then your brain is still forming, but the neural networks they're already formed, but now they're pruning, is what it's called. They're pruning at that time. And so if something happens during that time, it is harder to repair, and it can affect you in different ways. A little bit later ages, like elementary school, you'll see kids acting out. So you'll see a lot of acting out behaviors. They won't really understand the emotional impact of whatever happened to them. So that's when you see kids having behavior problems in school. Maybe something's going on. And then during adolescence and like high school age, that's when people start. That's when your prefrontal cortex is really developing and pruning, which is where you can plan activities, and you have impulse control developing at a really high rate, and being able to strategize and things like that. And so you see people doing a lot of really risk-taking behaviors at that time. So that's like, he or she just like went wild during high school. Well, maybe something happened to them during that time. And so that's kind of the developmental stages of trauma. And at any time, trauma can be repaired. It's not like, well, something happened to you, or you had an abusive childhood, or you had neglectful childhood, and now you're just all kind of messed up in relationships. That definitely can be repaired, and a lot of it can be repaired through connection with yourself and being able to share your story and find it validated. Even if your parents weren't able to protect you, other people can hear you and tell you that you're safe and you're worthy of care. And also you can start to rewire your neural networks, and I can share that later as part of my journey to healing from trauma.
Yeah, well, maybe we should just go into that piece too of your own trauma story, and whatever you feel safe in sharing about that, your own personal trauma story I think people would appreciate hearing, and because I'm sure plenty of people have stories of their own.
Yeah, sure. I'm a little nervous talking about it. I've never talked about it recorded in front of a large audience. But I talked about it in therapy a lot, and I'm okay to share it. But so I guess maybe in this I can illustrate how trauma might affect somebody. And so my story was it was not repeated trauma. I had several different incidences that happened throughout kind of the developmental period I was talking about. But the first one really shaped how I saw other things, and I think it kind of stacked other things up for me. But when I was 4, I was sexually molested by a family friend. And I don't know how many times it happened, because some of those memories are pretty hazy, but I don't anymore, but I had a lot of guilt and shame around it, because I enjoyed the attention that it brought, and it was a father figure. And so I implicitly trusted this person. It was a friend of mine's father, like a little friend that I would go on a play date with, and Dad would be there. And so, and I'm pretty sure that there was porn viewed during that. So I had a lot of triggers around porn that I worked through as well. And so that was the event. And that part wasn't really as damaging as really how my parents handled it. And they were young, not really, really young parents, but pretty young parents. And now I know that they handled it the best that they could. But what I learned from that is that I wasn't worthy of protection. And I, as a child, needed to protect adults from the things that happened to me. Mm-hmm. So I took that throughout my life for a really long time. But they decided not to, even though I had told them, and they knew what happened, and they knew what happened to my friend also. It was her father and another person that in my life happened to that person as well. They decided, I think, amongst themselves not to pursue it, because they didn't want us traumatized further by having to go to court or something like that. And also at that time, it was the early 80s, and they really thought that pedophiles could be rehabilitated. And so this was the hard thing for me to understand at the time, is that they kept bringing me over there, not alone, but they wanted me to feel like he was a nice person, even though he did this thing. And so they also told me like what his sob story was about how he was abused as a child and all of this kind of stuff. So in essence, I felt like they were trying to make me feel sorry for him to excuse his behavior. And their intention in it was that they were trying to show me that not everybody is all bad, even though people do bad things, they're not all bad. But the big message I got from it was, like this guy is more important than you are, and we're not going to protect you from him. And he sent me Christmas cards for years. It was all really kind of messed up. But now that the actual event and the way my parents handled it has been neutralized, I can see that they just made poor choices with it. And, they really were trying to protect me. It's just that they did the wrong thing, but they were following what kind of guidance they got at the time, when that was really how psychology saw it at the time. Like during the 70s and 80s, it was like, well, you can just love people better. And really you can't. In a lot of situations, if somebody has done something like that, then you can't. So that was the first event, and that really made me feel like there was something wrong with me at my core, that I was unlovable. And so I really internalized my whole world, and I started just reading all the time. Like I was just this voracious reader. I would take books with me everywhere because it made me feel safe to have a book in front of my face. Like I wouldn't have to deal with people. And I had this very strong internal world, because I really didn't trust that other people were going to love me for who I was, because I just thought they would find out what a dirty little girl I was, is really how I felt. And that kind of stacked up on itself, because I was bullied as a kid, but not that I'm saying that I deserved that, but I think I was also putting out this energy of there's something wrong with me, and other kids pick up on it and they don't really know what it means. And so they think that, you're just kind of a weird kid. And I was also really sensitive. So I picked up on other people's needs. And so I think that really the gift of all of this was for me is that I really developed this sense of self, that I really knew myself. And I felt like deep down I'm this awesome person, but nobody else knows. And I developed this sensitivity to other people's needs, because I found that if I could be there for other people, and I can protect other people in some way, that will heal me, which I think is part of what led me into being a therapist. And but at the time, I was taking in too much of everybody else's emotions and making them my own because I didn't know how to protect myself. So that was the first one, and then I had some other experiences. Like when I was 13, this guy that was like 22 at a party almost raped me, and it was really scary. But then I had a friend that busted down the door, literally like banged the door down and came in and saved me. And then I had an incident in college, kind of similar, at a party, and I'm still not even really sure what happened with that because, college, I was drinking a lot and drinking for the first time. And so I had one of those situations where this guy said we had sex and I didn't remember it. And I still don't know if we did or not. But yeah, so that's kind of the basic story of it. But I think that really what I walked through life feeling like for a long time is that nobody really had my back, and that I was going to have to earn other people's love and respect and their care because I wasn't inherently going to be given protection.
So through all of this, I mean, this is a lot of trauma you've experienced, obviously, and it sounds like probably working through that, you've worked on yourself a lot, and going into sex and relationships in your adult life after kind of coming to terms with some of the trauma and perhaps dealing with some of the trauma, which we want to hear about how you work through that. But do you think that on top of feeling that no one had your back, how did this trauma affect your sex and the relationships that you've been in since then?
Yeah, well, it definitely affected me wanting to even try to have sex. I didn't have sex for the first time until I was 22 years old because I was just really scared of it. And I was just afraid. I don't know. I mean, I can't even like put a word to the fear because it's kind of like it's the 4-year-old inside me that was scared. And so I'm very, in the therapy that I went through, and also I talk about this when I work with people with trauma, it's called ego state therapy, where you look at when a traumatic event happened to you, and when you're triggered, whatever age you were at, or whatever age you were when the traumatic event happened, is kind of the person running the show when you're triggered. So anything sexual for me, anything that was related to something being really sexy, I was triggered because I think because of the fact that there was the porn playing in the background. So there was it was 70s porn too, right? So it was like the sexy music and all of this kind of stuff. And so like anything that seemed really sexual or that I would be sexual would make me feel just really dirty and like really scared. And I would get triggered. And so I would go into fight or flight or freeze. And for children, it's usually freeze. So a lot of times I would go like hide behind a bed or do something like that. And so I just really avoided it for a long time. And then when I finally did have sex, I chose somebody that I thought was safe. It wasn't really a safe person in the end, but I mean, but the experiences I had with him in the beginning were safe, but I wasn't choosing the right kind of person because I really didn't even know how to choose somebody that was sexually safe. So early experiences of sex were not very positive, and thinking of myself sexually in relation to somebody else was not positive. I really didn't. I struggled with masturbation for a while too. I did it, but I felt kind of guilty because that was part of the sexual abuse that I went through. That was him teaching me how to masturbate at 4 years old. So like it wasn't even mine, and I had to reclaim masturbation as something that was mine, and it was my sexuality. But that took a while too. But through my therapeutic experience, I did that for myself. Masturbation wasn't even something I ever talked to my therapist about for a long time, just because of the feelings of shame around it. Even though I did it, and I enjoyed it, there was a part of me that knew that as an adult or as an adolescent, however old I was, that it was okay. The 4-year-old was still present. She was just like, I don't know if this is safe. Like, this is scary. This makes me feel like a dirty little girl. That was kind of like the catchphrase that I had that would come up, the tape that would roll in my head was that. And it was very much like something a 4-year-old would say,
Yeah, so you shared a little bit of the ways that you worked through your trauma. Can you, so how else? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you did a lot of therapy and trying to choose partners where you felt safe. But what are some other ways that you really worked with your trauma? And I imagine you're still working today.
Well, the first step in my experience working through my trauma was actually seeking therapy, because part of my trauma was that when I was 16 and I was starting to really realize my sexuality at that time. I was a little bit of a late bloomer in that area too, but I asked my parents to go to counseling, and they wanted us to keep it in the family. You know, that's what you hear that a lot, keep it in the family. And they were afraid, you know, they felt guilty about what happened to me and stuff. Um, so it was very therapeutic for me to actually seek therapy, which I did for the first time in college when I was 19 years old. And I was psychology undergrad, and I started taking classes and stuff. And I started having a lot of triggers coming up and just remembering a lot of things that I had really suppressed because I minimized it. Like it wasn't important, because I was like, that happened to me a long time ago. It shouldn't be a problem anymore. You know, like that, I was 4, I should be over it. And that's kind of what I told myself. But so when I went to therapy, and Dr. Olmsted was his name, he was my first therapist, and I chose a man for a reason, because I really wanted to feel safe with men. And that was a really corrective emotional experience where I was able to talk to a man about what happened. And I shared this story with him, my story with him, and he really validated it, you know. And that was really the first time that anybody had ever validated that this was something that happened. It was a horrible thing. It was wrong. The way that it was handled was wrong. And so just starting there was huge, because for me, sharing my story meant that I was starting to own it. It didn't own me anymore. And thinking about it makes me want to cry right now. But for a lot of my life, that story owned me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what happens. Well, when you're holding in all to yourself, and there isn't anyone else there to support you in that. So did you? I mean, you told your parents when you were younger, and so were you through high school before you started seeking therapy? Were you telling friends about it? Were you telling little bits and pieces of it there, or did it really take you a long time, and not until you got in front of a therapist to really share your personal story?
Yeah, you know, I don't think that I shared it with any of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't. No, it was in the context of therapy that I first shared the story with anyone
Mm-hmm.
outside of the family. The other person I knew that it happened to, we wrote each other letters, I think, when I was in high school. So I shared it with her, but also it was because it also happened to her. And so I didn't share it with people outside of me, because I felt like, well, and just like many people feel who've been sexually abused, that nobody else had been, or that, you know, so few other people had been, and people would think that they think I was even weirder than they already did. So it really was, therapy was the first time I fully shared it. I'm trying to think. I don't even think I'd like dropped any hints or anything like that. I may be wrong, but I don't remember talking to anyone about it.
And now, with the knowledge that you have working in the therapeutic world, would you have done anything differently? Obviously, you'd be like, I wouldn't have been traumatized, but I mean, would you have done anything differently in terms of the way that you handled your healing? And would you have talked to more people about it before? Would you have, is there anything you would have done differently? Like if you could speak to, the
Yeah.
13-year-old version of you and say some words of advice, what would that be?
That's a hard one, because I didn't really have very good, safe, close friendships in high school. I don't think I would tell myself to do that, because and partly maybe it was because of my own attachment of not letting people in, that I didn't have those kind of friendships. I wouldn't say now that the friends I had would have been safe people to share that with. But I might advise other people differently if they do feel that they have safe friendships, that I would say to talk to your friends about it. It's hard with that age group, because other kids may not have the emotional maturity to handle what you're telling them. And so you do have the risk there of being further traumatized by somebody's reaction to your trauma. So it really depends on people of that age what I would advise. I would have advised myself, the only other thing I would have done was to really push with my parents to get therapy earlier, because I think that they would have given it to me if I had opened up to them about how important it was to me, but I was still protecting them from myself, which I did for years, which I've just recently in the past, like, I don't know, 5 years have started not protecting them from myself and each other. And, I got involved in their relationship and tried to do couples therapy with them starting at 12 years old and stuff like that. So I was very much about like protecting my family, but I was always protecting them from me too. So I think that I would have advised myself to try to let them in a little bit more to be able to help me, because they wanted to, they were afraid themselves. So
yeah, I didn't know how. So in terms of the sexuality piece, then, as tools and tips that you use for yourself, or that you'd recommend to our listeners after trauma, say they go to a therapist and they start doing therapy, but what are some of the tools and tips that you have for folks to be able to reconnect to their sexuality after trauma?
Well, the first thing that I think that the first thing I'd want to share though is the second step, which was really helpful in my therapy journey. If someone is able to access this, which is to do EMDR as part of their therapy, because talking about it and being able to rewrite the story is really important, and it's very good for the attachment part, but for really changing your neural networks, for changing the brain, EMDR is really helpful. That's eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and it actually, and it sounds exactly what it is. You use eye movements, it desensitizes you to the experience, and it reprocesses the experience. So that really helps with triggers, because the triggers are in your body. And talk therapy really helps with the emotional feeling and being able to release some of those things from your brain, but really changing your neural networks, it helps your whole body. So I would recommend also doing that. I just wanted to put that in. But one thing that really helps with reconnecting to your own sexuality, I think, as you start to change that story, is being aware, is really starting with masturbation, is being aware when you're touching yourself that you are a safe person, you love yourself, you are lovable. And so touching yourself sexually is an act of love for yourself, and it's a positive thing. It's a pure thing because you're loving yourself. And even if you feel sexual and you're thinking of sexual thoughts, that's okay. That's all part of sexuality, and sexuality in itself is a pure thing. What happened to you was not a pure thing. What happened to you was an awful thing. And it was somebody else's sexuality that was messed up, not yours. So that's a message that I would like to impart to people that are listening, to really tell yourself that, and to really just start touching yourself. And if you're feeling uncomfortable, stop and give yourself the time to really work through whatever's coming up for you, and know that you're worthy of that time of exploring your sexuality and feeling safe with yourself.
Yeah, I like that. That slowing down and almost touching yourself the way that you'd want a partner to touch you, even if you've never had them touch you that way before, and to let your body know that it's worthy of it, and that it starts with you, as opposed to just relying on someone else to do it for you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in there.
Or use vibrators to touch yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Maybe if that's a good point, because maybe if touching yourself with your fingers is too triggering, having something else, as long as that's not triggering too, could be really powerful. I think being able to touch yourself with your hands, once you get to that, is the most powerful thing, because you have that sensory experience of touching yourself with your hands. That could be really powerful.
Yeah, and then you can really, you're feeling on both ends. You're feeling with your fingers, and then you're also feeling with the skin that you're touching too. And there's a lot of potential there, and a lot of healing that can happen there.
So folks can listen to your podcast, obviously, the Make More Love, Not War, which is fairly new, and you can talk a little bit about that. How else can our listeners that are listening to your story, and by the way, thank you for sharing, and thank you, like it was very powerful. I am borderline was going to cry a couple of times. I was like, keep it together. So thank you for sharing that. But just wanted to know how those folks that want to work with you, how they can, and a little bit more about your podcast as well.
And I imagine most of you say you were doing a lot of work with men. Are you doing a lot of work with trauma with folks too? Or are you referring out for trauma? I mean, what does that look like when people work with you?
No, I also work with trauma and anxiety, and I work with both men and women through trauma and anxiety, and that's an area I specialize in. I also specialize in body image issues and disordered eating, and so those are my main areas, and also work with families with special needs kids as well, because self-care is so huge in that area as it is in all areas. But if you're in the state of Texas, I am licensed in the state of Texas for counseling, but I'm also a coach. And so I can do online sessions for coaching, but we can do coaching around those areas of relationships and sex and trauma and anxiety. I think those are all really interconnected, interrelated, and really being able to connect that with the mind, body, and spirit. And so I have my website is terahharrison.com, so people can find out more about my private practice there and also about my coaching.
That's TERAH. Yeah.
And then Harrison, so it's two H's together.
Okay, double H.
Double H, yeah.
And then you have your podcast too.
Yes, and then I have the podcast, and in the podcast we talk a lot about sex and relationships, and I have to say that I, through my own personal healing and also the podcast, which has brought a lot of emotional healing between my husband and I, we have really awesome sex, and so I want to put some hope out there for people who have had trauma, that you can feel not only safe with yourself, but with your partner, especially if your partner is willing to understand and engage in your healing, which my husband was. And so I'm really grateful for that. And also for myself for breaking my own pattern and choosing somebody who was safe and that showed me I was worthy of protection. So that often is the first step in that kind of healing, the relational healing of it.
So that is choosing partners that, and I think I just want to add to that. I think what happens after trauma is a lot of folks, and I remember reading this in that book, The Body Keeps the Score, that a lot of people are actually choosing partners that reaffirm their trauma.
Yes.
This old patterning in their brains, and so you have those people that are like, why do I keep choosing these people that keep hurting me or triggering me of my old trauma? And so there's something in there that's a combination of the personal work, the therapy, the self-love, and making different choices, and one of them being choosing partners that actually treat you with the love and respect and worthiness that your system needs to overcome the trauma. And easier said than done, right? There's like the saying, we don't choose who we fall in love with. And I think and maybe you can share what you think about this, but the more work that we do with therapists and the more support we do and the more of our own healing we do, we get more control over those choices. And then that's just an opinion, but I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I definitely agree to that. And my story is definitely a testament to that, because the person that I was with before meeting my husband was somebody who re-traumatized me. And even this as a therapist, I was in graduate school at the time and still made this kind of choice. So it's not your intellectual knowing, but it's really the healing that you go through as you're rewriting your own story and as you are showing yourself that you are worthy of this time to heal and you are worthy of this protection, and taking the time to go to therapy or go talk to somebody that helps you work through this, and in that connection with that person who is safe, you learn how to develop a safe connection. You change your attachment to a more secure attachment. You can do that within therapy or within a really positive relationship. And then you take those skills outside of that, and you're naturally, your heart is desiring something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a client or someone who used to work with me who her whole body would tense up anytime she'd be touched by anyone. Didn't matter if it was romantic touch or sexual touch. She would just tighten up, and she had a lot of trauma from her childhood, and she was blessed with meeting this wonderful man that became her, her husband, who was just so loving and patient with her along her journey. And it was and still is a journey of it's a constant journey of him being patient for her when he touches her. If her body freezes up, he just slows down and checks in, and then goes into self-care. She goes in self-care mode, or he asks what she needs, and sometimes sex gets taken off the table. And I think that a lot of people are choosing is to, again, they're choosing, they don't believe that that's available, I guess is what I would say, is that people that have experienced trauma, they don't really always understand that there are plenty of folks of all genders that will still love you and show up for you, no matter how traumatized you are. If people think that there must be broken, no one wants me because of my trauma, nor will anyone be patient with me along the way, and that's not true. It's just they're out there, and it takes part of doing your own work, and also making different choices and staying open to meeting folks that actually can show up that way. That it's totally possible.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Terah, so much. Thank you. And I didn't realize that this was going to be your first time sharing your story so openly. I just figured that you talk about it on your podcast all the time. So what an honor it is to have you share such a vulnerable, intimate story with our listeners. We really, really cherish that. And I hope that for our listeners that just hearing someone share so vulnerably, even if you don't have this kind of trauma, just hearing vulnerability like that can inspire you to be more maybe open or proactive with your own life.
Yeah, and I hope that it inspires hope for people, because statistically, we know how many people women go through sexual trauma, and people go through trauma in general. And it's so isolating because people don't talk about it. And I think that the power of rewriting your story and it not owning you means that you can share it.
Well, I absolutely feel honored to have taken part in this interview with you, and it was a pleasure having you as a guest. To our listeners out there, check out makemorelovenotwar.com or the website, or the podcast, which is probably everywhere podcasts can be listened to.
It is.
Yes, awesome. And all right, folks, that was a powerful episode, but we'll see you next week for another episode of Shameless Sex. Ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.